Welcome to Weekly Parsha Insights. Parshas Mishpotim. So, we're going to begin by examining the first pasuk of the Parsha and the Rashis as an introduction to the whole Parsha. The first pasuk of Parshas Mishpotim is Ve'ele ha-mishpotim asher tosim lifneim, which translates, these are the laws you should place in front of them. And perhaps this is famous. Rashi says, normally, when the word Eile is used, it means to negate what was said previously. But Ve'ele means to add. Says Rashi, what are we adding in this very pasuk? We're adding the following statement. Ma harishonim misinai af elu misinai. Just like the earlier aforementioned matters were from Sinai, so to this, meaning Parshas Mishpotim, is from Sinai. Now, the Parsha is going to get into the detail of many mitzvahs, mainly from Dinei Mamonos, from monetary matters, and we know this from the Gemaras that we've learned. Seder Nezikin, essentially, Mishnayos and Gemara deal with the full detail that can be extrapolated from the psukim of this week's Seder. And as an introduction, Rashi tells us that this too is from Sinai. So the first question I want to ask is, what does Rashi mean when he says it's from Sinai? Does he mean it was given at Har Sinai? We know that Aseres HaDibros were given by Har Sinai. Does Rashi mean to say, oh, this too was from Har Sinai, this too was said by Har Sinai? Is that what Rashi means to say? And secondly, why is it important to know? Who cares? It was said by Har Sinai. The whole Torah has to be kept. Midrabanon, Midoraisa, Har Sinai, not Har Sinai. Who cares? The Torah is there to be kept. Why is it important for Rashi to tell us that it's from Har Sinai? And the next Rashi, the other question is on the next Rashi. Rashi says, on the pasuk Tosim Lefneim, Rashi says, Hashem says to Moshe, it shouldn't enter your mind to say, oh, I'll just teach Klal Yisrael 2 or 3 times the halachas until they know it. Sedura b'fiyem k'mishnoso, like they know information, they know the learning. I'm not going to bother myself to really explain to them the reasoning and the explanation, the broader explanation for the halachas. Therefore it says, you should give it over like a meal prepared for people to eat. And the question on this Rashi is, what was the Hava Amina? What would Moshe Rabbeinu have done had Hashem not given him this instruction? Why is it necessary for Hashem to tell Moshe Rabbeinu, give the full picture, give the halachas with all the explanations, with all the reasons? What, you think Moshe Rabbeinu is looking to have an easy day? Oh, I'm not going to bother myself with all this. I'll just give him the quick Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. What's going on? So, let's begin with a discussion that is had around what actually was said by Har Sinai. So there's a Gemara in Zvachim, Daf Kufta Tezvav Amud Beis, and it's a Gemara elsewhere, it repeats the same machlokes. We have a machlokes, Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Shmuel says, Klolos Nemru b'Sinai or Protes ba'Oel Moed. The main rules, the headlines, were said by Har Sinai of the whole Torah. The detail, though, was said later by Oel Moed. Rabbi Akiva says, no, Klolos uprotos Nemru b'Sinai v'nishnu ba'Oel Moed v'nishtalshlu ba'Arves Moed. Rabbi Akiva says the whole shebang, the whole Torah, the big general rules, the detail, all of it was said by Har Sinai. It was repeated in Oel Moed, and it was further repeated in Arves Moed. So you have Machlokes, Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Shmuel says only the general rules, the headlines were said by Har Sinai. Rabbi Akiva says every detail of the Torah and mitzvahs was said by Har Sinai. Fine, nice Machlokes. The Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh asks something which can only be described in yeshiva terms as a bomba kasha. This is a brilliant question on Rashi. It goes like this. We just quoted Rashi, and the Orach Chaim is understanding that when Rashi says, Ma horishonim misinai af elu misinai, what Rashi is saying is, really, Mishpotim weren't said by Har Sinai. That would be the obvious way of reading Rashi. So therefore, Rashi needs to emphasize, but don't worry, it's just as important as if it would have been said by Har Sinai. That's the point that Rashi is making. Now, if you understand it like that, says Orach Chaim, which opinion is Rashi lining up? Rashi is lining himself with Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel, who said only the general stuff was said by Har Sinai, but not the detail. Therefore, Rashi comes along to Mishpotim and says, don't worry, this detail is also important. It's like, just like that was by Sinai. This is also from Sinai. It's also important like Sinai. Says Orach Chaim, but there's a Rashi in the beginning of Parshas Bahar, where Rashi says, Ma inyan Shmita it's Har Sinai. Why do we have Shmita written next to Har Sinai then? Bahar. Vahaloi kol mitzvahs nemru said all the mitzvahs said by Har Sinai. So Rashi says, Alama Shmita nemru kloisel protesel v'diktuken misinai av kulon nemru kloisein v'diktuken misinai. Says Rashi, the whole point of that juxtaposition is to tell you that the entire detail of Torah was said by Har Sinai. So hang on a second. Rashi in our Sedra sounds like he's going with the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel. Rashi in Parshas Bahar sounds like he's going with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. So it's really a very big question on Rashi. Where is Rashi standing in this? And don't worry, it's going to get more relevant to us soon. It's not just a shtickle Torah for the sake of it. But the central question of this Orach Chaim is where I want to begin. Now, it's unusual for me. I normally like to try and develop an approach which is sourced. And I'm going to share with you an approach today which is not sourced. It is completely my chiddush. I've looked around to really gain insight into these Rashis. I spent a bit of time on it, and I couldn't find anything that was explained it enough. So I'm going to attempt something, but I can tell you now it is my chiddush. If you want to argue with it, you're very welcome to. If you find proofs against it, I'm more than happy to hear. But we're going to begin by defending Rashi from the Orach Chaim's kasha and develop what is Rashi really trying to achieve here. What is Rashi talking about? So my humble opinion is to suggest that what Rashi is not doing is Rashi is not entering into this debate of how much information was imparted by Har Sinai. That's not what Rashi is trying to do here. So the whole basis for Orach Chaim, where's Rashi holding? Which shit is he going with? It's not about that. You can have the machlokes, you can have the discussion, how much information was imparted by Har Sinai, but that's not what Rashi is seeking to address here. By the way, in brackets, I should mention this because it's just very, very interesting. Rabbi Akiva holds that by Har Sinai they heard all the detail of the Torah. How was there even enough time by Mamad Har Sinai for the entirety of Torah to be communicated? How do we understand, even if we wanted to, Rabbi Akiva's opinion that all of it was imparted by Har Sinai? There's a lot of information. I mean, you're talking about hours and hours and hours on end of Klal Yisrael listening to Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim, Even Ezer, Choshen Mishpat. I mean, it doesn't make sense. How can it be? Now, interestingly, just adding little brackets here, Rav Matisyahu Salomon, Zechusa Yagin Aleinu, at the end of his Sefer Matnas Chaim on Shavuos, he comes to this question, which I just posed now, from a different place. You know, we all know that on Shavuos we eat milchiks, and the Mishnah Berurah brings one reason we eat milchiks is because they all heard by Har Sinai about Basar v'Cholov, and they figured, their kelim are no longer kosher, so therefore they couldn't eat meat anymore. So that implies that the level of detail that they heard by Mamad Har Sinai was to that level, that they understood the intricacies of Hilchas Basar v'Cholov to the point that they realized that the kelim were no longer good, right? So Rav Matisyahu poses it as a question. He says, I know that Rav Sadia Gaon writes, he writes in poetic writings, but he writes how all of Torah is alluded to within the Aseres HaDibros. Okay, somehow we understand that there's a remez in Aseres HaDibros for all of Torah. But to think that they got the detail of Hilchas Basar v'Cholov by standing by Har Sinai, Rav Matisyahu asks in wonderment. He says, sorry, he doesn't understand. So in my great humility, about 12 years ago, I wrote him a letter to America, and I suggested him a pshat, which I still think is true, that it doesn't mean Hashem stood there and went, or even Moshe Rabbeinu stood there and went, Shvis Hashem like this, the first halacha in Shulchan Aruch is, at the end of it, it's Tov Lev Mishta Tomit. Okay, let's move on. Even Ezer now, right? Come on, it never happened. It's ridiculous. That's not what happened. What happened was, Mamad Har Sinai was a blitz. It was a moment of enormous clarity. The window opened, and boom, everyone just saw the Torah in its entirety. It's almost like like a magical moment. All of Klal Yisrael just got filled with Kol HaTorah Kula. We entered that sphere. We entered that holy place where we saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we just got to see the whole Torah. It didn't take time. There wasn't a structured learning program. That's my chiddush. I have no source for it, but that just was my understanding of. That's how Torah became by Har Sinai known to everyone. If you want to go with Rabbi Kiva who says all of the detail of Torah was given by Har Sinai, in my opinion, that's the best way to understand it. That it wasn't that it was given by Har Sinai in detailed Shiur format. It was given by Har Sinai as a gift of just a momentary blitz of clarity. Boof! Everyone just knew the whole Torah at that point. Ramatzion never replied to me in the letter, so I don't know if he agreed with me or not. But maybe he didn't. But that's my opinion of how it can work. Okay. Now I want to try now and get into Rashi. Well, I've just tried to establish what Rashi is not saying. So just to be clear, what we're trying to grapple with is what is the message here that Rashi is pointing to? What is it that we need to know about Mishpotim and how it relates to Har Sinai, and why is it important for us to know? So take a step back a second. I want to take you through a few midrashim which are fascinating. The first midrash, Shmos Rabbah, says as follows: Rebbe Omer, Kishem shehiza HaKadosh Baruch Hu al hadibros. Kach hize al hadin. In the same way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu warned us with Aseres HaDibros, so too he warned us with the din. Din meaning mishpat, the interchangeable terms here. Din, mishpat, mishpatim, dinim mominus, it's all the same thing, right? Hilchos, monetary matters. Says the Medrash Lama. Why? Why is it as significant as the great big main Aseres HaDibros? Says the Medrash, Shaboy ha'olam tolui, because the whole world depends on it. And the Medrash quotes a pasuk in Mishlei, which we're going to get into in a moment because it's quoted elsewhere as well. And the pasuk says, Melech b'mishpat yamid oretz. A melech with mishpat, he establishes the land. The pasuk does continue, which this Medrash doesn't make reference to, but we're soon going to, V'ish terumos yiharasena, and the man of Trumas will tear it down. We'll get into that in a minute. But first, the Medrash is just simply saying, mishpat, din, Dine Mominus, monetary matters, are so fundamental to Torah, the entire world depends on it. And the Medrash continues, Uboid Tzion Nivnis, and Yerushalayim will be rebuilt because of Mishpat. As the pasuk in Yeshaya says, Tzion b'mishpat tipodeh. Tzion will be redeemed with Mishpat. Not only that, Uboid Tzadikim is Gadlim. Tzadikim grow, spiritually grow from Mishpat. Shenema Asher Shem Mishpat. So you see something here that the Medrash is alluding to that is absolutely tremendous, that's awesome, that's really growth-inspiring from monetary halachas. So why is it so fundamental? What is it that's so... What's the secret here? So if you look in the pasuk in Mishlei, which I said was quoted by the Medrash, and it's quoted elsewhere as well, the Malbim explains this pasuk in true Malbim creative style, but I think it really gives us a window into Mahalach Aviyah. And we know one of the presents that a Kohen gets is called Truma. So the Malbim takes a look at the pasuk and he goes, whoa, there's the word Melech mentioned there, there's Truma mentioned there, we're talking about a Melech and Kohen Gadol. And this is what the Malbim says. A Melech and Kohen Gadol were two leaders of Klal Yisrael, and each one had a different responsibility. The Melech was appointed to watch over Mishpat, to make sure the laws in the land were kept, and the Malbim makes clear, Bein Odom Lachaveiroi. The Melech had to make sure, the king had to make sure there was order, law and order in his country. People treated one another nicely, Bein Odom Lachaveiroi. That was the Melech's responsibility. The Kohen Gadol's responsibility was on Avodas Hashem, on Horah and Torah and mitzvahs. That's more mitzvahs Bein Odom Lamokim. That's how the Malbim splits the role between the two. And the Malbim basically says, in the pasuk, Melech b'mishpat yamid aretz. A king establishes the land with mishpat. Great. When the Kohen Gadol and the Melech work hand in hand and they're both focused on L'Shem Shamayim, this can be a great land that they've established together in partnership. But Ish Terumos, when the Kohen Gadol, says the Malbim, doesn't think anymore of the public good, but he thinks only of the Trumos. He thinks to himself, I'm going to get matnas kuna from everybody, I'm going to get everyone's gifts. And he starts thinking in those terms, but not in terms of responsibility for the spirituality of everyone else. Then, that's destruction. What I take from the Malbim that's important in reference to where we're going with this is, it's an insight into what Mishpotim, the role that Mishpotim play. Mishpotim are Bein Odom Lachaveiroi. We don't have time in this share to go through examples, but if you look around, and Sfarim Mishnah of Aaron has a few, and others, there are tremendous examples of supreme standard of Bein Odom Lachaveiroi that is apparent, specifically in Parshas Mishpotim. Famously, Rabbi Shlomo Salanter's Yortzeit always falls in Parshas Mishpotim. This year it was on Sunday, first day of the week of Parshas Mishpotim. And it's interesting because you might have said, well, Mishpotim is very sort of dry and legalistic and technical, all the monetary debate and back and forth. It's not really, it doesn't have the crucial nature of, empathy and relationships. But it's actually very far from the case. We embedded within Hilchas Mishpotim is very much a heightened sensitivity of Ben Adam Lachaveroi. Just one example, how we treat the slave. He's your slave. But if you only have one pillow, you give it to him, as one example, right? We know that. And there's so many more examples of within the monetary matters, within Mishpotim, it's absolutely clear that the driving force within the halachas of Hilchas Mishpotim is a sensitivity of Ben Adam Lachaveroi. So, if we accept that, then let me address the second point, and then we'll come back. And the second point is, what happened by Har Sinai? Why is Har Sinai such a big deal? We all make reference to Maimad Har Sinai, the great big moment of Har Sinai. What happened by Har Sinai? Well, quite obviously, what happened by Har Sinai and why it was so consequential in our Jewish history, aside from the Yetzias Mitzrayim, the two big events, Yetzias Mitzrayim and Maimad Har Sinai, as we know, we make reference to. It was the moment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed himself to us as a people. That's what happened. It's a moment of revelation. That's what Har Sinai was. Hashem spoke to us. Hashem gave us the first two Aseret Dibros. As is famous, we couldn't take it, so the Klal Yisrael died. They had to be brought back. They said to Moshe, "You carry on." But essentially, what they couldn't take was Hashem's revelation to us. But here's the thing: it wasn't merely the case that Hashem wanted us to have a spiritually uplifting event where we all went, "Oh, wow," and we all felt on high, and we all felt spiritually connected to Hashem in a way that we hadn't before then. It wasn't just about that. Har Sinai was a moment that we became his people. It was a moment where we committed ourselves to live a life al pi Torah and al pi Hashem. We committed ourselves to follow in Hashem's command. So, the big event of Har Sinai was the fact that Hashem revealed himself to us. But the consequence of Har Sinai was the fact that we came away committed to him as a people. We were taken as a people for him, and we committed to live our lives, Nasa v'Nishma, al pi Torah. Now, the Medrash famously writes, Loi ha-Medrash ika ela ha-Maisa. That in life, in Yiddishkeit, it's never about the theory. There's a Lashon of the Gaon in Evan Shleimah, he writes, Ein nikro tzadik ela b'maisa ha-mitzvos. A person can only be called righteous when you're looking at his actions. And this is really, really important. You can feel spiritually uplifted. You can think you're really close to Hashem. But if it doesn't match up in reality to how you're actually going about fulfilling your role as a Yid, following Hashem's command, doing the mitzvahs to the best of your ability, if that's not happening, then there's no way that it matches the value. There's no value there. The value comes from the Maisa. Now, one shouldn't just do without any thought, without any emotional feeling and experience, of course. The action itself should be wholesome. But ultimately, the value of a tzaddik, the value of a spiritual level is determined by one's actions and not by the spiritual experience that one might feel. Because ultimately, what's the purpose of Torah? Chokhmah of Torah, the purpose of Torah is there to guide us so that we live differently, that we live our life differently. It's about living life. It's not about sitting in wonderment and in contemplation all day long. As valuable as it might be to contemplate every now and again, I'm not saying one shouldn't, but it's not about living in cloud cuckoo land. It's living in theory, living in the theory of connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's living a life of Maaseh HaMitzvahs, living a life of doing Torah, of doing Torah mitzvahs, acting according to the Torah. And I'm saying is that when it comes to evaluating spiritual level, spirituality, coming to evaluate how much does Hashem play a role in my life. You can say from today till tomorrow and say, well, I always say Baruch Hashem, I always say Mitzvah Hashem, I'm always thinking about Hashem. Yeah, but how does it translate in your life? Are you putting on tefillin every day? Are you saying Kriya Shema before Zman? Are you keeping Torah? Is Torah playing out in your life as a priority? Is that what you're trying to do? Obviously everyone according to their level, but is that what you're doing? Because that's what it's going to depend on. That's my point. There's a Medrash Rabbah, the Medrash says, Lokach Nosna Kadosh Baruch Hu dinim acha aseres adibros lefisha abrios ma'avirin aladin v'hu nifra mehem. The Hashem dafka made dinim, monetary matters, follow aseres adibros, because the world, what happens in the world is people transgress on dinim and Hashem pays them for it, pays them back for it. It means he punishes them. And he brings examples, right? Sodom, where was their error that Hashem hit them for? They've been on lachaverei. Well, with regards to Mominus, Yerushalayim says in one they were over on Mominus. That's when they got destroyed. And he goes through examples. That's when Hashem hits. So therefore, it's important for people to see the significance of Mishpotim, and that's why Hashem put Mishpotim after Aseres HaDibros. That's what the Medrash writes. Stam. Another Medrash. There's loads of Medrashim on this topic, but another Medrash is Kol Dayan Shadon Din Emes LaAmito Nasa Keilu Nasa Shutav Lakish Broken Nasa Bereshis. There's such a significance in getting to the truth of the matter of monetary matters, that if a Dayan does so, they become like a shutav, like a partner with Hashem in creation of the world, which goes to show how fundamental and how important monetary matters are. Okay, so we've said lots of different introductions, but I want to really tie it all together and see what am I trying to get to here with regards to Rashi. Here's what I'm suggesting. You have Har Sinai, Parshas Yisroi, great, incredible experience first. And that's followed by a Parsha of Mishpotim. And Rashi comes along and says, Ma horishonim miSinai, just like all that which you've already learnt is from Sinai, af elu miSinai, this is also from Sinai. And we asked the Orach Chaim's question, we said, what do you mean? What does Rashi hold? What was actually said by Sinai? I said, no, let's not get into that. Let's not get into the debate of what was imparted by Sinai. Either Rabbi Akiva or Rabbi Shmuel. It doesn't make a difference at this point. I would like to suggest that what Rashi is saying is, Rashi is pointing to the fact, don't let Har Sinai remain only in theory. Don't let it be the case that you've walked away from Ma'amad Har Sinai and what you have is on your passport is stamped, I've had a great exhilarating experience and a great spiritual high because I saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveal himself to us. Wow! Says the Rashi from the Chazal, but trying to point us to the Parsha. The Parsha immediately follows Har Sinai with the Eila HaMishpotim. Don't stay with Har Sinai as a maimad, as an experience in and of itself. Link what you experience with a practical part of Torah. Hilchas Mominus, how you actually conduct yourself. Ma horishonim miSinai, just like it was significant, that which we experienced early on with the aforementioned Parsha in Har Sinai. Says Rashi, so too this is as fundamental. This Mishpotim is miSinai, meaning it should be linked to your experience of Sinai. Mishpotim is the action to that which Har Sinai was the theory. And when I say theory here, I don't just mean theory. I mean, it was an emotional experience. It was an experience, no question. It was an experience like nothing else. But that's all it was. Mishpotim is the link where we take that experience and we actually see how to live life as a result. And this is true of all of Torah. But specifically Mishpotim, because Mishpotim represents Ben Adam Lachaveroi. And why is that key? Because ultimately, as I said before, what's the Torah there for? The Torah is there for us to become better. I'm going to make reference to another Medrash. The Medrash again quotes this pasuk I said earlier in Mishlei. Melech b'mishpat yamid eret. Says the Medrash. Who's the Melech? The Melech is Torah. And the Torah, b'mishpat, with mishpat, establishes the land. Says the Medrash. And what is ish trumas yerasan? I mean, this guy trumas. What does it mean trumas? The Medrash says, in mesim adam atzmai kitruma hazu. If a person makes himself like this truma, shemushleches bezovis abayis. Truma is like that thing which you put to the side for the kohen. So it's like it's flung to the side of the house. And a person says, Ma li b'toirach hatzibur. Why do I need to get involved with the tzibur? Ma li b'dineim. Why do I need to get involved in all the halachas of the monetary disputes? Ma li l'shmoya kolam. Why do I need to listen to everybody? Harei ze machriv es ha'olam. Such a person who takes zero responsibility for those around him, says the Medrash, he's destroying the world. And that's alluded to in the pasuk, ish teruma is yerasano. A person who makes himself like a truma means he puts himself off to the side, doesn't take interest or care about other people. He's causing destruction to come to the world. This is why Mishpotim follows Har Sinai. Because Mishpotim dafka, Mishpotim because it's been on a chaveroi. The theme of Mishpotim, the whole emphasis of Mishpotim, the whole idea behind monetary matters is not just legalistic, facts and information. Very far from it. It is an encouragement to live life with care and attention and empathy and sympathy for other people. And it's improving us as people of living life with a greater sensitivity of Mamlech Havere. And here comes the finale. We asked the question, Asher tosim lifneihem. Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, make sure you lay out these halachas properly. Don't just tell them the halachas. And Moshe Rabbeinu might think, I'll just give it to them, and I'm not going to bother explaining to them the tamim and the reasonings and the full extent of the halachas. I'll just give them the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. What HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying to me, in my mind, the key words here are, you should make this muchen lechoy lifnei adam, Shulchan Aruch, that has food that's ready to be eaten. What's the whole significance about food that's eaten? It goes inside a person. It permeates the entire existence of a person. It's not just something misof al chutz. It's not something external. Food is something that's there. You take it, you eat it, it goes through you. Says Rabbi Shalom, I don't want Klal Yisrael to hear Mishpotim merely from a legalistic perspective. I don't want them to hear and be told, you must do this, you can't do that, you must do this, you can't do that, because that misses the whole point and the whole emphasis, as HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of what I want Klal Yisrael to draw from Mishpotim. I want Mishpotim to be like food for them. I want it to sustain them. I want it to educate them so that they live lives differently, so that it points to a different way of living life in action, not just in theory. So, just to conclude, let's remember what we asked and what we answered. The question we asked at the beginning was, what does Rashi mean when he says that this is from Sinai, just like earlier is from Sinai? Does it even matter if it was from Har Sinai? We asked the Orach Chaim, doesn't even make sense because Rashi says elsewhere that everything was imparted by Har Sinai. Here he seemed to be saying not. We asked another question, Asher tosim lifneihem. What does it mean that Moshe Rabbeinu is being instructed here to give more than just the highlights of the halachas? What's the meaning of this? So I hope, with Hashem's help, I hope we've approached this in the right way, in a truthful way. But we've come to an understanding that what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying here is Mishpotim follows Har Sinai because your experience of Har Sinai should translate into a real practical way of living life according to the wisdom of Torah. And not just that's true of all mitzvahs, specifically regarding V'namach Haveroi, that a person should take this approach. That a person should look at Mishpotim and try and get into the kishkas of what is the empathy, what is the sympathy, what is the feeling that the Torah wants me to have when I conduct myself in these monetary matters. And Emet Hashem, hopefully, if we do so, Tzion b'mishpat tipodeh, we'll be zeicher to see the rebuilding of Yerushalayim by living our lives according to Mishpat. Shkoyach. Yeah.